You can think about the fact that George W. Bush every week could count on Will Ferrell or somebody else mocking him. Bill Clinton was mocked endlessly over 8 years. So, Donald Trump suggesting that he get a court injunction against Saturday Night Live doing what it's been doing now for decades. A little ridiculous.
Yep. We begin this hour with the new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll that finds most Americans, 55%, want House Democrats to provide more oversight when they take power by opening a number of investigations into the president and his administration. 43% do not. And when it comes to Russia's meddling in the 2016 election, just 34% believe the president is being honest and truthful. More than 6 in 10 Americans do not believe him. As far as the president's job performance, 43% of Americans approve, 54% disapprove. And when it comes to the president's re-election, only 38% of registered voters said they would definitely or probably support him. More than half, 52%, said they would not.
Yeah. It's really, we have so many different ways to go with these poll numbers. But I've got to say, Casey Hunt, the most concerning for Republicans and for people inside the Trump administration, it has to be the question, whose policies do you want enacted in the new term? Who do you want leading Washington as far as policy goes? 48% say they want the Democrats. Only 19% say they want Donald Trump. It is shocking that less than 1 in 5 Americans want Donald Trump's vision of America enacted over the next 2 years. I have never heard anything like that before in a poll following a midterm.
It's pretty stunning. And that vice that Republicans in Congress are in, it's just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And you're going to see it all play out this week as, we hurtle toward a shutdown that literally nobody on Capitol Hill wants. Normally, when you have some sort of shutdown like this, there's at least some constituency somewhere, even if it's a one-man show in Ted Cruz, who is gunning for a shutdown in the Congress. In this case, congressional Republicans are looking down Pennsylvania Avenue and thinking, what is this guy doing? They all want to leave town for Christmas. They could easily agree and pass a spending bill. But instead, the president is out there on a limb by himself, insisting that he has to have this border wall or he's going to shut down the government. And that's just one example of how congressional Republicans are increasingly at odds with a president in their own party. And it comes in this greater context of all of these investigations, which nobody wants to talk about. There's a report in the Washington Post. Sung-Min Kim, the reporter there, went around and asked a bunch of Republicans outside the chamber about these investigations. And I mean, the quotes are borderline absurd. Chuck Grassley was like, stop. I haven't read it. I don't even want to take questions about this. John Kennedy called it a stupid question. I mean, the divide, it's bigger than it ever has been before. And those poll numbers help explain why that is.
Well, and Noah Rothman, it's never made sense to me, the president's immigration policy. If you just look at the numbers, even after the president got elected, building a border wall was a loser. The president's immigration policies are actually the minority, even in the rank and file of the Republican Party. If you take polling on specifics, but just think about these numbers, and I wonder why what exactly Republicans on Capitol Hill are afraid of these days. 62% of Americans believe that Donald Trump is lying in the Mueller investigation. Only 38% want him reelected president of the United States. That's a devastating number for anybody that knows anything about reelect numbers. And only 19% of Americans, want Congress to follow the president's policies over the next 2 years. 48% want Democrats in Congress to control it. Where do Republicans go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not entirely sure. The re-elect numbers are, I suppose, a little early in the 2020 cycle, and after repudiation of Donald Trump at the hands of voters at the polls, you expect those to be artificially depressed. However, the border wall issue and the immigration issue distinguishes the Republican Party from the Trump Party, and always has. The GOP has never had an interest in funding even a modestly funded at $25 billion, a boondoggle in the desert. They know that this is a necessary expense, a waste of taxpayer money, and they would have appropriated it if they didn't. Now we're down to $5 billion, where the president could declare victory and walk away, but he's just not interested in that. He wants to agitate, as we said in the last hour, he wants to agitate his base. But that base, though it makes up a majority of the Republican Party, is not the entirety of the Republican Party, and it is not the Republican Party's constituencies in these districts where they lost. You can be a minority party and ideologically homogeneous, or you could be a majority coalition, a governing coalition, and the president seems to prefer the former to the latter.
So, Kurt, what does the future look like when 48% of Americans say they want Democrats running policy in Congress over the next couple of years, and only 19% say they want Washington to follow Donald Trump's vision for America? 19%. You've worked with members. You've spent a good time on Capitol Hill. How do Republicans respond to that?
Well, I think that what you're going to see is a lot of investigations from Congress, from places like my old stomping grounds at the Oversight Committee. And I think that Republicans' big dilemma is how are they going to, match their past rhetoric about wanting transparency and oversight over the executive branch. Republicans were relentless, Joe, at investigating Barack Obama's administration. Things like Fast and Furious and Benghazi and the IRS. Well, now Democrats are going to have that power, that authority to call hearings, to have subpoenas, and they're going to exercise that authority. They see this election as a call for check and balance. And when you look at the president's numbers, there's this massive trust deficit. The American people don't believe President Trump. Traditionally, presidents have some room with the American people because there is some good faith there. Well, he doesn't have that. And as Democrats begin to find things, do these investigations, get new facts, those numbers are going to only go down for President Trump.
Well, and Mika, the Republican Congress knew exactly what it was doing with their investigations. And in fact, Kevin McCarthy, now the minority leader for Republicans in the new session, actually bragged on television about the Benghazi hearings going on so long that they dragged down Hillary Clinton's ratings. So, of course, the Republicans can't expect the Democrats to not conduct investigations because they actually did it, and in fact did it to such an excessive amount that many people believe they were distracted from more important jobs.
There are so many legitimate questions, clearly, as well.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.